Shark Island is a lonely, empty spot that feels like Mars because it is so far away from the rest of the world. It is made of rocks that have been smoothed out by the Atlantic Ocean's waves, and the only thing that gives it shade is a few palm trees. This small island off the coast of Namibia has a past that is even darker than its landscape. The only thing that stands as proof is a small memorial made of marble that looks like a grave marker. The coastline has grown around Shark Island, making it a peninsula that sticks out from Lüderitz, which is close by and in the extreme southwest of Namibia. But from 1904 to 1908, it was home to a horrible prison camp that people called Death Island. There were a lot of Herero and Namaqua people who were sent to Shark Island as punishment for fighting against German colonization of their land. At the last stop, people were tortured, starved, and forced to work hard to improve the port and lay a railroad track. Shark Island was a slaughter that happened in the 20th century. It was a sign of the coming flu of horrible crimes that was fascism in Europe. Even though Leopold II's crimes in the Congo are better known, the crimes on Shark Island were just as bad. The prison camp was the worst example of killing in the area. It was caused by the scramble for Africa and was a sign of what the Holocaust would be like. For many, the scar it left behind is still raw today. Genocide in Namibia. At the close of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, Africa was experiencing a phenomenon that was sweeping across the continent. European countries, eager to acquire more riches and power, rushed to the continent in search of such opportunities. In order to achieve their own goals, France, Britain, Portugal, Italy, Belgium, and Germany tore Africa apart and reconstructed it in their own countries. Due to the fact that Europeans governed over 90% of the continent by the year 1900, the scramble for Africa marked the end of self-governance for approximately 1/5 of the world's landmass. It was in the 1880s when Germany staked a claim to a region in the southwest of Africa that is now known as Namibia. This region had a landmass that was more than twice as large as Germany. The country was taken over by them by the use of brutal force, and they seized land, poisoned water wells, and stole livestock. After being subjected to systematic sexual and physical brutality by colonists for an extended period of time, a neighboring tribe known as the Herero rebelled in 1904, and the Nama eventually joined them in their rebellion. Germany's response to this rebellion, which occurred a few years after the insurrection, resulted in the deaths of around 100,000 members of these tribes, with half of them being killed in concentration camps. By 1908, German soldiers will have been responsible for the deaths of more than 80% of Namibia's Herero people and 50% of the Nama population living in Namibia. Founding of Shark Island. Shark Island is a small island in Lüderitz Bay, which was once known as German Southwest Africa when it was a colony. The desert and the wide southern Atlantic Ocean are on either side of the bay. When the rebellion started, Major Theodor Lüderitz, who was in charge of Germany's colony, wanted to make peace with the rebels. But the general staff in Berlin saw the fighting as a chance. Why not improve the infrastructure of this small stopover while getting rid of the tribes that were rising against them at the same time? A strategy that the British colonies used during the South African War gave people the idea to build concentration camps. It was a straight translation from English to German of the word concentration camp. Soon after, Lüderitz's armies had to withdraw from Herero rebels on April 13, 1904. He was removed from command, and General Lothar von Trotha took his place. When General Lothar von Trotha took over, he told the Herero people, "You have to leave the country. Every Herero inside German lines will be killed, with or without a gun, and with or without cattle." Chief Samuel Maharero of the Herero people told his forces very clearly not to hurt German women or children. Despite this, 4 colonist women would later die in the fighting. Instead, General Lothar von Trotha said that if his German troops came across Herero or Nama women and children, they were to drive them back to their people or have them shot. A humane war cannot be waged against those who are not human, von Trotha rationalized. Life on Death Island. One of the trials that the prisoners who were imprisoned on Shark Island had to endure was hard labor. As a result of being fed primarily uncooked rice and flour, the laborers in Africa were forced to endure the oppressive heat of the African sun with empty stomachs. The prisoners on Shark Island were required to dig graves for their fellow inmates, who were frequently relatives, and lift the remains of those who had fallen. In addition to this, the captives were subjected to cruel and inhumane treatment. After falling, they were subjected to suffering. The use of leather whips was a type of torture that was occasionally employed. The gunshots were sometimes completely random. When they were prisoners on their own land, they were sometimes forced to endure the plain humiliation of toiling under hard conditions, wearing rags, and living in tents that were badly constructed. The final trial was, of course, the primary objective of Shark Island, which was to bring about death. On the island, a missionary documented as many as 18 incidents per night. It is estimated that 80% of the people who were held on Shark Island passed away due to the difficult conditions and the fact that they were subjected to brutal and vicious treatment. Legacy of Shark Island. Body parts of Herero and Nama victims were sometimes sent to Germany as samples to back up claims of Aryan superiority. This was the start of Germany's sins in the 1930s and 1940s. For this reason, Herero women were made to scrape the skin and flesh off the heads of 3,000 dead prisoners with pieces of glass so that the skulls could be sent back. Eugen Fischer, a German doctor, would also do tests on the prisoners. He would give them smallpox and tuberculosis and force them to get sterilized. Germany's sins started in the mind. For example, Namibia was invaded because Europeans thought they needed the land and resources more than the native people who lived there before. A lot of the land that the Germans took during colonization is still owned by their relatives. There are still more monuments and cemeteries that honor the German occupiers than those that honor the Herero and Nama. Petrus Cooper, the chief of the Nama group, told the New York Times that his community, which doesn't have paved roads and where many people live in shacks, was still feeling the effects of the genocide's loss of life, property, and land. He said, "It is because of those wars that we live like this on this barren land. But there is a push in Namibia to get Germany to pay Namibia back." The fight for reparations. We live in overcrowded, overgrazed and overpopulated reserves, modern-day concentration camps, while our fertile grazing areas are occupied by the descendants of the perpetrators of the genocide against our ancestors, said Namibian activist Vera Katuo. If Germany pays reparation, then the Over-Herero can buy back the land that was illegally confiscated from us through the force of arms. And of course, Shark Island was a practical canary in the coal mine for the mid-century crimes of Europe. It's important to see Germany's history in Africa as continuous with its better-known dark chapters in the 30s and 40s, noted Jürgen Zimmerer, a historian at Hamburg University. In Africa, Germany experimented with the criminal methods it later applied during the Third Reich, for example through the colonization of Eastern and Central Europe. There is a trend among the public to view the Nazi period as an aberration of an otherwise enlightened history. But engaging with our colonial history confronts us with a more uncomfortable thesis. There is also a clear link between the genocide in Namibia and the Holocaust in Europe in the middle of the 20th century. As a senior lieutenant from Bavaria called Franz Ritter von Epp, who had been in charge of a company in Namibia under General Lothar von Trotha, hired Adolf Hitler as a spy to get rid of communists in the military in 1922. In this role, Hitler would meet Ernst Röhm, who was Ritter von Epp's deputy. Eventually, Rome would get Ritter von Epp to raise the 60,000 marks needed to print the Völkischer Beobachter, the Nazi daily newspaper. Ritter von Epp would also get Hitler and Rome a stock of extra-colonial military uniforms. The outfits were meant to blend in with their surroundings in Africa, and their golden-brown color gave them the name Braunhemden, or brown shirts. Shark Island is proof of the violence, greed, and hatred that came from the scramble for Africa, which reached its peak in Nazi crimes. This rocky part of Namibia sharpened the knife of terrible things that happened in World War II. It's a sad memory of how cruel people have been to Africa for hundreds of years. We hope you liked this video. Watch another video here.